Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Saudi House at Davos. It's great to see so many familiar and new faces. I'm Abdullah Jeffrey, the Deputy Director General of the Strategic Management Office under the Council of Economic and Development Affairs in Saudi Arabia. I would like to welcome you, everyone, today to the inaugural session of the Saudi House, From Reform to Delivery, Executing Change at Scale. Joining me on stage today is an esteemed panel of leaders from government, private sector, and international institutions who are shaping policy, investment, and global progress. Her Royal Highness, Ambassador Reema bint Bandar Al-Saud, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the United States, His Excellency Khalid Alfalih, the Saudi Minister of Investment, His Excellency Mohammed Aljadaan, the Saudi Minister of Finance, His Excellency Faisal Ibrahim, the Saudi Minister of Economy and Planning, Ms. Lubna Olayan, Chair of the Corporate Board of Olayan Group, and also Chair of the Board of the Saudi Al-Awwal Bank, Ms. Kristalina Georgieva, the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund. Thank you all for being with us today, despite your demanding schedules. Our session today comes at a critical time. We're living in a world that is increasingly complex, marked by uncertainty and risk. Geoeconomic confrontation, supply chain disruptions, and rapid technological change all demand new responses. In this context, transformation is not optional. It is the means through which economies build resilience, sustain competitiveness, and secure long-term growth. But as we all know, ambition is not enough. The real test is turning reform into durable outcomes. And that is the focus of our session today. We will look at what it takes to deliver successful transformations. We will look at the role of competitiveness and capital in supporting that transformation and how that is shaping Saudi Arabia's role in the global economy. So let us start by first examining what it takes to deliver successful transformation. Your Royal Highness Ambassador Reema, as a leader who has led several people-focused initiatives, what role does human capital play in delivering long-term growth?
Well, thank you for the question. From my point of view and what I've observed in my participation through Vision 2030 is that human capital today is the actual driver if you want a competitive modern economy. If you don't have the right investment in your young people, if you don't create the opportunities of jobs for them, and if you don't create the social space for them to thrive, you're actually creating an environment that is not user-friendly for this human capital. I think one of the biggest achievements that I've observed, again, over the past 10 years is the fact that we have a talented, unbelievably capable base of people that are not just the students in the country that are going out and traveling in the world, but these are a base of future employees and current employees that could choose to work anywhere in the world. They could compete anywhere in the world. London, New York, San Francisco, but they choose to come home and they choose to build at home and they choose to deliver at home. And for me, that is the biggest symbol of the success of Vision 2030, the opportunity that this capital has at home.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. And I think we can all agree that the pillar of any national transformation is its people. I would like to build on that to discuss other pillars and drivers of lasting impact. Your Excellency Faisal Ibrahim, as Minister of Economy and Planning, you see how strategy translates into execution. What allows for transformation to become sustainable, and what has your experience shown about how governments move from reform to delivery?
Thank you, Abdullah. It's great to be here. I'd say, first of all, from the start, I think it's important to adopt a long-term view and to be stubborn about sticking to that long-term view, no matter what distractions happen. So keeping an eye on long-term risks, keeping an eye on the opportunities, and then the homework that needs to be done in the short term. Two, there are things that require sprints, and there are things that require discipline, persistence, but also equally important, the agility to adjust. And I think under Vision 2030, I believe we've developed the capability as government teams to know when to go full throttle and know when to fine tune. And that's something that's very important. You plan for a specific outcome. Planning is a continuous process. If the indicators are telling you that you need to change course, you should be able to change course. So adopting the long term, being bold, thinking about agility, and generally accepting the fact that no transformation, no matter how much you try to move from vision to strategy to actual outcomes, will happen without some transition risk. Sometimes uncertainty is unavoidable, and that's fine. The most important thing is understanding the clarity of the purpose, why we're doing what we're doing, what outcomes exactly are we pursuing, and then continuous engagement, continuous communication of the progress, transparently and diligently.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you for highlighting the important point of having a clear purpose, but also have the agility to adjust as the transformation proceeds. Now, sustaining the momentum over time depends on how growth is financed, prioritized, and managed, particularly in an uncertain global environment. Your Excellency Mohammed Aljadaan, most countries want growth and resilience, but the hard part is managing this delicate balance. And as economies face rapid change and uncertainty, how do governments sustain growth while maintaining fiscal resilience?
Well, thank you very much and congratulations. Abdullah just came from his honeymoon.
Thank you.
Congratulations to you and your wife. And thank you everyone for being here. I think just to be a little bit provocative, visions and reforms does not actually fail because the vision is wrong or even the initial implementation is wrong. A lot of times you see around the world reforms that are actually good. They start in a good base, but then they stall. And the lesson learned here is you need to make sure that A, you stay the course, His Excellency Faisal mentioned it. You need to make sure that you are actually prepared for a route that is sustainable. And unless that reform is sustainable and not dependent on personalities or interventions every other day, it is not going to work. So it will need to be really a sustainable, and for that to happen, it will need to shift from just a vision, a policy, and sometimes a program into changing the behavior.
Yes.
So unless it becomes actually the default behavior of institutions, of markets, of people, it is not going to be sustainable. And that is very critical. The second part is credibility. And unless you actually build credibility in the market with your people, you are not going to be able to continue. And that credibility comes from being actually very pragmatic, making sure that you maintain your fiscal policy and discipline, but at the same time, refocus your resources where it matters. That's what really matters from a fiscal point of view. Fiscal space is very limited. No matter how rich a nation is, it's really directing that resource to where it really matters, where it makes more impact compared to other initiatives. Sequencing, prioritizing is absolutely crucial. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you for highlighting the importance of the multiplier effect in directing the resources where it matters. To place this in a broader context, I'd like now to take the international perspective. Ms. Kristalina, from the IMF perspectives, and given that you have seen many transformation efforts over the years, what distinguishes Saudi Arabia's delivery model compared to other economies at a similar stage of reform?
Let me first say salam alaikum. I am a big admirer of the Saudi reforms for 3 reasons. First, and we heard it from Minister Aljadaan, the persistency of reforms that, when success is achieved, does not lead to easing ambition. And we have seen that in the Saudi context in a very impressive way. The reforms that pulled the government out of direct role in the private sector and allowed private sector to flourish in today's environment are a major source of resilience, because what we see is private sector is more agile, more adaptable, and it has been the source of success in a very turbulent world. Second, when we look at the scale and scope of reforms, it is so impressive that no stone is left unturned, from large companies and space for their expansion and profitability, to very important, creating an environment for micro and small enterprises, creating an entrepreneurial spirit that when you are in Saudi and you talk to young Saudi men and women, is so exciting. When we talk about diversification in Saudi Arabia, it goes across the board from industry, diversifying away from oil and gas, to services, financial services, tourism, sports, fashion. And I want to bring the attention of the audience to what I wear. This is Saudi young woman, fantastic designer. And when you engage with these young people, you understand that the transformation is generational. It is going to have massive impact. 3, Saudi Arabia decided that they should be carer of reforms with others, and that they would bring their reform experience to share with the rest of the world. We have opened an office in Riyadh. I'm very grateful to you, Minister Aljadaan, for working on it. And this office is to bring not only Saudi reform experience, but reform experience from other places, so they can be momentum built. And when we work together on programs in countries that require IMF assistance, I can tell you, Saudi demand for reforms is no less than IMF demand for reforms. And that is so helpful for countries to find their path for the future. And of course, we look at the way technological transformation is taking place. I was quite impressed. I was preparing for this, looking at, okay, what are the indicators for success? UN ranking on e-governance number 6, World Bank ranking in tech number 4. So the prominence of this reform process is truly remarkable. So from my heart, keep going, stay the course, and help others to do the same.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kristalina, for these strong points around staying the course, the importance of diversity and diversification, but also inclusion with different parts of the economy and engaging our local and international partners along the road. And I think this takes us nicely to our next theme about the role of capital and competitiveness in transformation. Your Excellency Khalid Alfalih, one of the clearest tests of whether reform is working is how capital responds. How do countries secure investment in a difficult-to-read global environment?
Well, thank you, Abdullah, and congratulations again on your wedding. As mentioned, there is significant risk globally, geopolitical, supply chain, technological disruptions, and capital cannot escape the risk completely, but they need to find ways to triangulate those risks and grow, because they need to grow. The world is actually needing a lot of significant investment to address these massive trends taking place, whether it's energy, digitalization, and AI, supply chain reconfiguration, globally. They need a place where the opportunities are abundant, addressing significant local markets, but more importantly, addressing global markets. They need resources, whether it's the human resources Princess Reema talked about, the energy resources, which are becoming scarce and have to be decarbonized. They need to address climate change and sustainability, and they need access through effective infrastructure. Kristalina talked about digital infrastructure, but physical infrastructure is very important. No country in the world, and of course regulations, transparent regulations, predictable regulations. No country has all of those to 100%. But who can give you the mix that give you optimum access to opportunities while addressing all of those risks? I contend that Saudi Arabia has been able to provide that formula, and the proof is in the pudding. Our FDI is 5x what it was before the vision. Our local investors are, of course, voting with their own money. Local investment has doubled. And we have reached the level of China and India, which are significant investment destinations in terms of capital formation as a percent of GDP. And you see it in global supply chain like marine shipbuilding on the East Coast, auto sector on the West Coast, hydrogen, the largest hydrogen project to address global sustainability, both green and blue, by global investors that are investing with Saudi. And of course, the availability of Saudi capital is another factor that we have put. So we are, partnership, I think, is a key variable, and the government is putting its money where its vision is, not just telling investors, come and do it on your own check alone. So we're, by co-investing with the PIF, the major Saudi companies, private sector, and Lubna, I'm sure will talk about this, are also believing in the vision and betting with their own money.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you for highlighting the importance of de-risking capital through clear reforms and engaging the private sector. And maybe I would like to tie that back to the point of credibility, Your Excellency, Mohammed Aljadaan. How does disciplined capital allocation translate into confidence across markets and institutions?
I think it's a lot easier to say that we have a vision and we are going to spend on it.
Yes.
But also markets will call your bluff,
Yes.
If you are not serious. So you need to be very credible, and you need to actually show that discipline on the ground and explain it to your people and to the investment community. And the key element here really is, A, you need to make sure that whatever you do in terms of reform is sustainable. B, it will need to be long-term. So you could have successes short-term, but it will need to be something that you can maintain, and it becomes the norm in the institutions. And 3, you will need to make sure that you create that credibility, and I can say it clearly that you maintain your buffers, you make sure that your rating is maintained, your Article 4 consultation with the IMF supports this so that they can actually give you that testimony that actually what you are doing is right. It's the third party looking in and testing every single part of your economy and your fiscal discipline. And then basically you need to create a credibility. I mean, I think in Saudi, the question is not, are we reforming? I think everybody would say it very clearly that we are. It's, did we cross the threshold that it is no longer just an initiative to reform, but actually it is a sustainable reform that everybody is buying into? I think we are. And if you see, when we started almost 10 years back, we had very ambitious targets. And looking at it today, if you have 93% of your KPIs are either achieved or on track, if you have about 260 or 69 ahead of target, 254 are on target, that's delivery. That is credibility that you are actually delivering in a sustainable way, but also maintaining your buffers. I mean, the resilience of the Saudi financial system is a testimony to this.
Yes.
The fact that we have grown our reserves between 22 and 25 by about 22% is a testimony. Despite the deficit, we are growing our reserves. The fact that we have one of the largest foreign reserves with our central bank is a testimony that it's a very strong, sustainable reform that will, be resilient in front of shocks. And we have seen how resilient the Saudi economy, despite all the shocks that came around us.
Yes. Thank you, Your Excellency. And you touched on the point of the threshold for credible transformation and how that threshold will invite partners, both domestically and internationally, to be part of this transformation. And maybe I would like to explore how these efforts are sustained. Your Excellency Faisal Ibrahim, when you look at today's GDP components, what tells you that this growth model is sustainable beyond 2030? And where are you most focused to ensure competitiveness continues into the future?
Thank you, Abdullah. I'm compelled to say congratulations on your wedding as well.
This panel is a nice wedding gift. Thank you all.
I'll start by saying maybe Vision 2030 is, the kingdom has sustained this transformation for a decade. Because and 2030 is not the finish line. The kingdom has put forward a clear and long-term challenge and then put forward measures to upgrade decision-making process, but also institutional capabilities to address it. You wouldn't do that if you just wanted an outcome 3 years later or 5 years later or 14 years later. This is a foundation for a more fortified future. We care about the non-oil economy. It's a sign of our decoupling from a single commodity. And today the numbers are promising. That doesn't mean our job is done. I think this is a milestone to acknowledge, not an accomplishment. The fact that non-oil activities today is the majority of our GDP at 55-56%. If you look at some subcomponents of non-oil activities, you'll see that a large number of them have grown consistently annually over the 5 years at 5 or 10% or even higher. And that's great news. I think the important thing is to see what His Excellency Mohammed Aljadaan said. Behind all of this, there's a culture change, there's a behavior change of unlocking potential. I think the thing that we really accomplished is we understand and maybe even countered value leakage, historic value leakage out of the economy. You can't contain it completely, but you understand what moves it. And this, I think, is the biggest challenge in the middle of a transformation. In the beginning part, it was all about catch-up. We needed to move fast. The policies that were needed were clear. They just required political will. Over the next phase that was started, I think, a couple of years ago, precision is more required in terms of trade-offs and impact. And spend needs to be made wiser. We moved from delivery at any cost, which was justified in a catch-up period, to delivery at the right cost. And here I think what we'll see more of, and what we want to see more of, is policy first and structural reform that couples wiser spend, not necessarily less spend, wiser spend, although it might entail a little bit a rationalization in the beginning before you understand the impact of it. And the signs are clear. The recent regulations that were announced allowing for non-Saudis to invest in the stock market without thresholds and limits is a promising sign of further, more bold structural reform. And we're very keen on that.
Yes, thank you, Your Excellency, and foreign ownership in real estate, to add to that. And you highlighted, Your Excellency, that our economy today is more diversified with the non-oil sector growing rapidly. You also mentioned the leakage, and both of these points require a key contribution from the local private sector. And on that point, I'd like to get the view from a senior representative of the private sector on our panel, Mrs. Lubna Olayan. From your perspective, what feels genuinely different for businesses today compared to a decade ago?
First of all, thank you very much for being on this panel. And I also feel I have to say congratulations.
Thank you so much.
But this would, we as a group have been operating in the country for almost 80 years, and I have the honor of chairing a bank, which is one of the oldest banks in the kingdom. The changes that has happened throughout that journey is tremendous. I remember very well in 2004 at the Jeddah Economic Forum, I gave a speech about my vision for my country. And the theme of that vision, of that speech, was there can be no progress without change. Little did I imagine that 21 years later, we would be seeing such a tremendous change. I was advocating for more increased centers of excellence. We had at that time Aramco, SABIC, few other centers of excellence, few universities. Now we have universities that is doing tremendous research for the whole world. So the changes have been tremendous. We were
Which
all
university, Lubna?
KAUS, King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, of which many of our esteemed panelists here, and I had the honor to be on the board of that university. What they're doing is tremendous in terms of research, entrepreneurship, encouraging innovation, and all of that. So from a country, when I started, mostly oil-based economy, to a country that's fashion, you're asking what changed. What changed is the diversity for the private sector to play in. Tourism was never there. Tourism is the highest employer as a service industry of human resource. For me, I worked in our company for 18 years with no other female in there. Now to see the tremendous talent of females and their contribution to the economy is a tremendous change. All these changes being vibrant allowed us, the private sector, to be able to hire great talent. It was difficult attracting good talents to the kingdom. Now it's much easier, and I see Jerry here building beautiful residential places for people to stay in. So even living in a nicer environment, enjoying the society, and all of that. So overall, the landscape has changed. And I'm glad Kristalina mentioned it was big companies taking the major business. Now we're seeing SMEs, banks, the banks are all trying to encourage SMEs, help in the financing. One more thing I want to say is that technology and has gone through all the sectors. And I was thinking before this panel, Saudi Arabia is a G20 country. We had the honor of chairing the G20 during COVID years.
Yes.
We all forget how quickly the country adopted to chairing such a big, mega, really task during and being able to deliver it very well using technology. So the changes in the country is great, and I have to say the working and the ease of working is much easier.
Thank you, Ms. Lubna. Indeed, a sustainable growth model that involves all segments of society contributing to quality of life creates opportunities for all. And we've heard some fascinating views from our panelists about competitiveness and credibility. But these changes don't stop at the domestic economy. So I'd like now to turn our focus outward to Saudi Arabia's expanding global role. Your Excellency Khalid Alfalih, what does it take for a country to become an economic connector rather than just a capital destination?
Well, let me just remind everybody that Saudi Arabia is not new to being part of global connectivity. Our energy endowment has been developed and monetized for the sake of the national economy, but also the global economy. And I contend you would not see the development in the developing world and the billions of people who came out of poverty and have been able to access the middle class without abundant energy that was developed and traded. That DNA and culture has been really scaled up and put on steroids, so to speak, under Vision 2030. So it's no longer about just building petrochemicals, fertilizers, minerals for trading. The financial markets, we have the Financial Sector Development Program under the stewardship of His Excellency Aljadaan that has scaled up the Saudi capital markets from a sleepy market that was maybe ranked 25 today to being truly bidirectionally interconnected with the rest of the world. You see the ETF architecture of ETFs. Of course, we've joined at the beginning of the vision all of the major global indices, MSCI, FTSE, and the others, and everybody now, as mentioned by His Excellency Faisal, can trade in Saudi Arabia with lowering the access limits. New energies, of course, we are no longer happy to just being an oil and gas supplier, and I mentioned hydrogen we are the largest producer and betting on new economies. We're localizing renewables. We're connecting through cables to Africa, to all of the GCC, Iraq and Egypt, but also looking to connect our renewable energy. We have signed up to IMEC, and we intend to be a major supplier of new energy. We're investing in minerals. We just had the FMF in Riyadh, but we're also investing globally and have signed agreements to address global supply chains and critical materials. And going back to my first answer, investors are betting with their money. You see a company like Total, given the need to develop new products and materials in a decarbonized environment, investing with Aramco $13 billion. In Amiral, all of a number of Asian companies from Korea and China investing in a $6 billion complex for shipbuilding. So the kingdom, as I mentioned earlier, is a significant local market. I would also remind everybody that we are strong believers in the GCC. The Middle East will come out of some of the turbulence and unfortunate geopolitical and security tensions, and we will become a significant local market. But we see ourselves as also a hub for the new economy, including data and AI. Humane is not just to serve Saudi Arabia and make Saudi Arabia one of the important players in data, artificial intelligence, and all of the spillover of that into productivity and progress. But we want to provide it for the region and the rest of the world by, again, betting our own money while opening up for connectivity through partnership.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Indeed, fascinating points about the kingdom's role in the global economy. And as we position ourselves as a global investment platform, the success also depends on the direction of the global economy itself. And Ms. Kristalina, from your perspective, and as economies enter a more volatile environment, what do you see as essential for the next phase of reform?
We need to recognize that over the last years, the world has become more multipolar, and that is going to continue. We would see a more dynamism that comes from it, as well as more frictions, more complexities. And in that world, there are two things that we need to remember. One, that transformations will continue, change will continue to accelerate. And that means an ability to adapt will become precious. And in that world of change, more often than not, things would be happening that we never expected to see. Our ability to think of the unthinkable and remain calm when the unthinkable happens is going to be hugely important for individual countries, for regions, for the world as a whole. And the second thing we need to remember is that while we see countries turning more inward, we also see countries that are stepping up for leadership and are combining domestic strength, without which you cannot be influential globally, with regional and global engagement. Saudi Arabia is among those countries. Minister Aljadaan chairs our governing body, and he does that with great thoughtfulness, providing huge service to 191 members of the IMF. Princess Reema serves on an external panel we created at the fund on entrepreneurship and growth. Again, bringing Saudi experience for the whole world to enjoy. And what I would advocate, and I have been advocating for this very strongly, is to recognize that we are interconnected. The world cannot go back in prehistoric times. Technology makes us all be like fish swimming in a fishbowl. Everybody sees everybody else. And in this interconnected world, it is hugely important that a country like Saudi Arabia presses more for regional integration. I visit regularly GCC meetings on the economic side, and I can see how seriously Saudi takes responsibility for GCC, then the broader Middle East, and then, of course, responsibility for the less fortunate. And that is something I want to, from the bottom of my heart, to thank Saudi Arabia for. When many countries are stepping back from offering a helping hand to those in need, Saudi is stepping forward. I can give you many examples. The most recent one is Syria, where we brought together in Alula the international community to think about the future of Syria. And of course, countries like Pakistan, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, I think, and across sub-Saharan Africa, we cannot be happy in our homes behind our borders in a world of misery. So please, Saudi Arabia, do what you're doing and lift up others to go with you.
Thank you. This is a fascinating call for action, and we appreciate your comments. I'd like now quickly to Ms. Lubna Olayan, from a global business perspective, how does this transformation change how international companies engage, partner, and invest in a country?
You know, we have a saying in Arabic, Ras al-Mal Jaban, which means capital is a coward.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, capital wants rule of law, wants transparency, wants clear investments. And I think Saudi Arabia now is providing that. And we see that happening. We have seen how many of the big infrastructure funds have come in here, precisely for the reason because they can put their money and their shareholders' money in the country, because there is a clarity and a path and complete transparency. The other thing which I think is encouraging is there is nowadays in Saudi Arabia, and it's much more, a very openness from the government. And I have to say, I was very impressed to see that many of the laws that wanted to be enacted in the country were put on a platform or were sent and shared with many of the private companies asking for feedback, because I think private sector and public sector have to work together. In the previous that we used to talk about private sector investments, but I think it's more than it's partnership. If we want the private sector to play a major role in the economy, you have to make sure the private sector is comfortable putting their money in the economy. And I think, as Their Excellency said, many of the private sectors are increasing their investment. But I think the biggest test is to see foreign companies coming and investing and having the confidence to do so. So I think all the environment, the regulatory environment, the transparency, the cooperation, and the government listening to the investors and seeing how can we help in what you need.
Thank you so much.
These are the...
Appreciate it. And Your Royal Highness, back to the question of domestic transformation and how it translates into deeper global partnerships. What does your experience suggest about the link between credibility and cooperation?
Well, picking up on what His Excellency Aljadaan mentioned about the credibility of the transformation, but also what Lubna talked about with the transparency and that partnership. Sitting in my spot in Washington, D.C. for the past 6 years, what I have observed and have had the privilege to participate in is minister after minister coming to the States, engaging with the private sector, engaging through the chambers of commerce, and really doing listenings and deep dives on policy, on changes, on reforms. And listening to people is one thing, but actually engaging and delivering is the proof in the pudding. And what the kingdom has done, to Lubna's point and His Excellency's point, is taken into account private sector needs, mapping that out with the economic goals and dreams of the kingdom, and then delivering. Our credibility is based on that. Our credibility and the sustainability of what we want to do is based on the individuals who truly believe that they had a part in this transformation. You can see that with not only the number of businesses that came to the kingdom when President Trump arrived, but the number of Saudi businesses that then came to the United States when the Crown Prince came to visit. The volume of trade between our countries is just continuously increasing, as is the numbers of investments. And the number of people who come to my office to ask me, Reema, what are the opportunities the kingdom has? What can we do together? Is sensational. And the partnership that I have as an embassy to receive this and then to be able to hand over to capable people at MISA, which is the entity His Excellency leads, Alfalih, we take the user journey from an idea in Washington or Los Angeles or New York to an application and implementation in Riyadh, in Jeddah, in Khabar, all across the kingdom. Because the opportunity is not just Washington to Riyadh, it's not just political. It truly is nationwide across both nations with a positive impact globally. But that comes from transparency, that comes from engagement, and that's where the credibility is born.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Indeed, credible transformation at home leads to international cooperation. Before we close, I'd like to ask each of our panelists briefly and from your own perspective, which principles, lessons, success factors from Saudi Vision 2030 reforms do you believe are most transferable to other economies? Maybe we start with you, Kristalina.
This is a very big question. We need 1 more hour for that.
We need a day for such a panel, I must say.
Let me sum it up. There are 2 incredibly important lessons from Saudi Arabia. Number 1, ability to set a course and adjust on this course. Lift up your ambition or adjust so you don't end up undermining trust in what you're doing. Done extremely well. Number 2, recognize that your most important resource are your people who believe in the course you follow. Mobilizing, Princess Reema said that in the beginning. I want all my member states to do the same, to excite, mobilize all their people to drive prosperity for the country.
Thank you. Ms. Lubna?
once the goals are set, once the objectives are set, I think that we have to have during the time some pause to see where we are so we can adjust. So the most, and we in the private sectors have used so many consultants, advisors, and you can have the most beautiful plan, but if the execution is not done well, then the plan is worth nothing. And these measurements during the journey allows you to see what you have done. As Christina said, you have to be agile, adjust in case there is adjustment, but at the same time, you have to be transparent and tell everyone. I have to say, I was a skeptic in the beginning of all the goals that wanted to be achieved in Vision 2030. I said, no way anybody can achieve this. But the transparency and the persistency and being this made the non-believers extreme believers and conforming to it. So it's a combination of agility, execution, transparency, and being very open about what the goals, the main pillars are for the country.
Thank you, Ms. Lubna. Your Excellency, Faisal.
So I have 2 points. I want to comment first on what Kristalina said about the kingdom doing what it's doing and having a spillover effect on the region. I think it's very important. I mean, when we started on this journey, we didn't know how much of an effect it would have on the region. And of course, our approach is stability is important and prosperity starts with stability. But I remember what you said, Kristalina, about the GCC and Saudi being a bright spot. And I agree 100%. And I've thought a lot about it. I don't think bright spots are permanent. They either make the area around it brighter, and that's success, or they're consumed by the darkness around it. So we have to steady the course. We have to continue delivering what we're delivering because of unlocking our own potential, but because of the impact that will be around us. And that leads me to your question. I think there's many things, but the one thing I would pick, although very abstract and not easy to find, to measure, is being genuine. I think 10 years of Vision 2030, 10 years of day in, day out, functioning like we're in a daily crisis. When COVID came, virtually nothing changed in terms of the workload on some of the ministers. I think some of the ministers enjoyed the extra workload, actually, but virtually nothing changed. We've been, because there was a clear purpose, a clear objective, and it's not just in the government. All of the people of Saudi Arabia know deep inside their hearts why we're doing what we're doing, and they're behind it, supporting it. There's more than one way to achieve a vision. We course correct, we learn, we experiment, but we're moving forward. And I think doing a transformation with that in mind, but also in heart, is unlimited energy.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm just mindful of the time. Any final thoughts, Your Excellency?
Very quickly, mobilize your nation with a very clear and ambitious vision. Stay the course and show them delivery, because the more you show them, the more they will believe in it and they will work on it and make it the default base for the people and institutions, businesses.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
I agree with everything that's been said, but let me give you a case study, Kristalina, that you would be interested in. In January 21, we went on a mission to a country called Uzbekistan. At that time, it was a closed country. They had less than $1 billion of FDI. And we sat with a reforming president who wanted to learn about what Saudi Arabia is doing and what Vision 2030 is doing to transform the country. And he designed his own plan. He didn't exactly copy us, but he listened. And he opened up. And today we have about $25 billion of Saudi investment, not just in energy, renewables, but also in the world's first net zero airport, Tashkent, as well as roads and other infrastructure. So this is a case of the Saudi end-to-end transformation inspiring other countries. We're doing the same in Senegal, Mauritania, other adjacent countries. But from my perspective, as a Minister of Investment who came from the private sector, as well as many of my colleagues, almost the entire government of Saudi Arabia came from the private sector. We put ourselves from an investment perspective of where the investors are. Is the risk that Lubna talks about manageable? We cannot eliminate risk, But are we owning the risk that we can control in a reasonable way? Are we making the opportunities? Are we looking at the entire value chain rather than an investment? So putting ourselves in the boots of the investor before we offer them an investment opportunity, I think is a key success for Saudi.
Yes, and that allows us to be a driver of change. Your Royal Highness, your final thoughts.
Well, I believe firmly, and the proof is in the pudding, as His Excellency had said, if you empower people and you give them the space to lead, they will take that drive and they will deliver. And I would tell you, when you place the right people in the right place at the right time, absolute magic happens. The kingdom is the place, we have the people, and the time is now.
Yep.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Unfortunately, we're nearly out of time. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our esteemed panel once again, Your Royal Highness, Your Excellency, Lubna and Kristalina. Thank you so much. Thank you.